welcome Kristyn Decker. Kristyn is the author of 50 Years of Polygamy, Big Secrets and Little White Lies. Kristyn is the founder and the director of Sound Choices Coalition, and she is a radio host. Welcome, Kristyn. It's great to have you back with us.
Thank you very much.
Kristyn, we were speaking a bit before we got on the air about the different lifestyle within a lifestyle that is actually a religion called polygamy. Now, the difference is the great dual standard of polygamy, not just sexually, but every day as far as privilege is concerned. Every single day. We were talking about the fact that my father ate out a lot in restaurants. If he had 6 wives, and he did, if he took one out to eat every night, which he didn't bother to do, but if he did, he would have been eating in a restaurant 6 nights a week. He did that, of course, but he didn't take his wives because he was meeting the priesthood brethren, he was talking business deals, or he was courting a new wife. So the lifestyle of the men, in reality, was not the lifestyle of the women. I want you to elaborate on that being something that you've seen or something that's common, or the principle of the idea of equality is lost.
I see this everywhere and always have, and even in my own family. I remember thinking that about my own dad. He got the royal treatment. All of his wives brought him luxurious food. They saved their pennies to buy the roasts and the meat and whatever was going to give him the most royal treatment when they were there, and fix him the best meals. And when he traveled, he got to go and go and go and go, and they all got to go with him or take turns, or he was going by himself. He got to do a lot of traveling because he was the leader and the council member and was requested to do his priesthood duties. He got the best of the best. And he would make a business trip into what he considered a priesthood business trip, into a rendezvous, and maybe take a wife or two and maybe not. But I remember watching that and going, oh my gosh, my dad has a good life. He has all those women who are doting on him, fighting and vying for his love and attention, and trying to be the best in every way they can. And that was part of my life. And even though there were 2 wives, I remember thinking all the time the same things. Boy, I got to fix the best meals. I got to be on my best behavior. I should dress up. I should look sexy. I should, all these shoulds, so that I could have the attention that I needed and wanted. And whether I wanted it to be competitive or not, it was I wanted to be loved and recognized, and I saw that happening on the other side of the fence as well. The men, I think that we've talked about this before, it's familiar, do in many, many ways get that end of their needs met. They get the best. It appears in most cases always that the women are so busy loving and doting on him to be loved. I want to be loved. I want to be recognized. I want you to love me. I want you to know who I am. And of course, the more wives there are, the more that happens for him, but the less the woman gets that attention and love, because now she's got to vie for that even more. She might save and starve her children in order to spend a date with her husband so she can be loved and attention. So all week long they're eating beans and rice and whatever, nothing, and bread and milk in my case, so that by Friday I can afford to go buy a steak or 2, so that when my husband's eating there, we get this great meal. It's just consistently appearing, and in most cases, even now, wherever I look around, it's still the same. All the women are still trying to get their husband's attention by how they dote on him and say, oh, my God, here's my God. You know, you got to love me. You have to love me back. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be better then.
In my father's house, when dinner was served, he sat at a separate table and ate a separate meal that was full course, beautiful meal, while his children sat at the big table and ate oatmeal or something else. So if he wasn't going out, he still ate like a king in the presence of his children who did not.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen this in my brother's homes, and I have seen this over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
Oh, yes, definitely. I have, and I've personally witnessed it many times. Not always, but many times. And there were times when I resented the fact that, I mean, it's only fair. If my husband's going to take me out on Friday, he's going to take the other wife out, my sister wife, on the next Friday, and then he's going to take me out on the next Friday. Well, we were so dang poor, I don't even know when we ever got money to go out. But I thought, hey, he gets to go out every Friday. And one of us is always stuck with the children. One of us is going to watch. I'm going to watch her kids while he goes out with her. And she's going to watch mine while he goes out with her. And I mean, I'm not faulting him, because that's what you do. You try to be equal with the wives. But it was like, wait, he's the one who always gets to go out on Friday. And it wasn't every night of the week, but there was consistently what I felt as inequality when I'm the one who has to stay home with the kids and raise the kids and get up breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals and do the dishes and clean the house and do all the laundry and keep up the yard and pull the weeds and all this stuff. And my husband can come and go as he pleases, because he doesn't have to take the kids with him. And he doesn't have to, and I'm not talking about just my husband, I'm talking about all of them. I watched my brothers do this. Leave their wives and go out with the other wives and go out again with another wife and go out again with another wife while they're all overwhelmed with the kids and the tears and the crying and the snotty noses and the sick kids. And in fact, I'm just remembering I saw that on public television. You know, somebody stuck with all the kids for a while. No, I haven't had a date in a long time. And so it's consistently part of the lifestyle as a man have, in that sense, I would say, way better care, food, love, doting on, so forth. And so
the men that have the financial means to take trips are always going on trips, and they may or may not take a wife with them. But the women don't go on those trips. They live a completely different life, staying home and being basically a single mom until they get their turn to visit him.
My husband only had 2 wives, and I felt like a single mother. And so I thought all the time, I felt my heart was out to those who had many wives, because I thought they only got to go, you know, once in a blue moon. That was my mother. She got to go more when she was younger, because there were fewer wives. But as Dad's family got larger and larger, her time to go out, and in fact, by the time it was maybe 13 trips that my dad took, and it might have been my mother's time, doesn't mean she got to go anywhere. It was about whether she had to work and show up to help provide for all those kids and family members and younger wives and younger children. And so consistently the trips and the money were in favor of my father.
When you look at the women that went to work to help support the family, there's been a lot of what I feel is propaganda on TV and other media, that these women, oh good, they'll go out to work and they're a polygamous wife and they're free and see the world, I'm free. Tell it like it is, Kristyn.
I think that there are a few. I've actually, you know, some really incredible polygamous wives who are self-evolved women. I've seen that a few times. A few.
Okay,
and it surprises me, and I've been really impressed. They have left the kids with their sister wives, and they take off, and that's the best they could have. It's like, wow, I get to have, and we've heard that, I get to have my cake and eat it too. I can have my life and travel and go do my thing, and I've got babysitters at home, and I can go home and, you know, participate in a so-called family or a partnership or whatever, and I can disappear again. And I remember being the wife who took care of the kids, the mom who was home with the kids, and there were good. That I got that. I loved that because I wanted to be the mom who was home with kids. But it was a joke. It was crazy joke trying to raise my kids and her kids and do what I said before, the laundry, wash the dishes. And I would feel bad that she got to go and sit in an office, a quiet space, be respected, be adored because she had skills, and people would talk to her throughout the day, and then she could come home and relax. And it was like, hey, but I'm the one who wanted to, well, she's the one who wanted to go to work and all these things. So there's both sides of that, but guess what? Somebody had to go to work consistently to help pay for the family, to help raise the family, or we were going to be completely on welfare. And there's no way our family was making it financially, especially by the more children I had and the more children she had. It was a requirement, and most of the women that go to work, I noticed, were housekeepers. I cleaned houses for years and years and years and years. After a while, I wasn't always watching the kids. I was taking my babies and I'd go clean houses, and then our younger kids were left with the older kids, which I talked about before, which creates big problems when you have babies raising babies and children raising children. And still, there was never enough. I remember thinking if I went to work, I'd have to pay for a babysitter, and I'd have to buy a car, and I'd have to pay for gas. And by the time I did any one of those three things, I might as well not go to work. So stay home and be in poverty, and stay home and wonder where the next meals are coming from, feast or famine.
And as these families increase and get larger, that problem gets worse, not better, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely worse. People know how hard it is to make ends meet, especially with the economy the way it is now. I mean, everyone knows it. Everyone feels it. And if they aren't feeling it, they know somebody who is. And in every family, I hear this consistently. I didn't go on a trip this year because we couldn't afford it. I didn't buy this year because, and I'm not talking about plural families, regular monogamous families who feel the hardship, who have smaller families. And yet you've got families who are having more and more and more and more and more children. How on earth can the majority, and they don't, provide for the families? It's just pretty much impossible. I've seen families that look and appear wealthy, and you've got kids raising kids while the women all go to help provide for that family, or the majority of them.
And how does the man live in that family?
And he's off to work, comes home, all of them making the best meals. Oh, my honey's here, I got to behave myself. Back to that royal treatment for their God of the house.
One of my sisters a while back went shopping, and I was with her. And I'd been visiting her, and the food in the house was extremely meager, extremely, not a little bit. It was lacking. She went shopping. She didn't have much money, but she bought the best she could, not much of it. And I said, what are you doing? She said, oh, my husband's coming. I'm going to see him, and this is for him. And I said, he doesn't eat what the children eat? She said, oh, heavens no. She said, I've got to do this because I have to compete with the other wives, and he won't come back to see me if I don't feed him the best I've got.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what she did.
And I think that depends on what kind of a man it is. He might go there and suffer, but he'd rather any day be at the other wife who's going to feed him better when it comes to the meals. And you're sharing that. I thought we might be talking about the same person, but we're not. And I've heard this so many times, I couldn't even tell you, too, about the young people who talked about the differences in their household. It was very obviously different in my own household, growing up household. Completely the opposite on what the meals were and what they looked like. And this young person was telling me about their dad who had, I honestly can't remember, but way over 15 wives, somewhere in the 20s. And so, of course, she only saw him every 25, 30 days, whenever he decided to show up. But if she got to know ahead, and of course he was letting him know because he wanted the best meal, and she did the same thing. It didn't matter that they ate literally rice, white food forever, indefinitely. It mattered that her God was going to show up. She had to give him the royal treatment and be accepted and loved, and so therefore she would throw out the royal carpet, no food for him, and so she'd save all the money she would normally spend so she could give him this immaculate meal, this great honor, because he's at her house, and all the wives, all of them were doing that. There might have been one or two that didn't give a crap, and because they didn't want him around anyway. And that's another story. But if you don't want them around, you know how to do it. You just don't fix them food, and you complain and you gripe in there like, I'm not coming back. I want to be treated royally because I deserve it in God.
That's right. So to live on the level of the women and children is a disgrace.
Mm-hmm. For I would say many. For many, I don't put my brothers in that category. I know the women fixed him the best, but I think he'd go eat a piece of bread if he had to, and he still wouldn't be unequal. I think that there are a few good men who really try, no matter what the capabilities of that wife is, no matter what, to be fair and equal. But of course he'd rather have a good meal, but he might say, oh, well, shoot, I was sure hoping for that meatloaf and baked potatoes and whatever tonight instead of a piece of toast, but that's okay, honey, I love you. There are a few good men and
that really try,
that really do try to care, but I've seen so much of the other. And I think, do you know what? I have to say this. It just popped in my head. I really think the women set themselves up for that. What if they all got together and said, hey, let's feed our kids and let's feed everybody the same, and we're going to all get together and refuse to do anything differently. I think it comes back to that martyr thing we were talking about. It's like, oh, I better behave myself, and I better be nice, and I better kiss up to my husband, and I better give him the best because he is the God of the earth, and I'm gonna suffer and let my kids suffer in order to do that because suffering is so good.
Well, also the consciousness is that if they don't do it, he says that he'll put them on a shelf. And I've literally seen not some, but many polygamous men who took the wife that had an opinion, that wanted something different, or that spoke out with any inconvenient truth, and just put her on a shelf literally for years, just didn't go see her.
Oh, I agree. I think that the wives would have to all band together, and we've heard that some do that. Yeah. And I think they'd all have to agree to agree. But this happened in our household over a specific incident once, with just two of us, and it didn't work and the reason it didn't work is because we agreed on this certain thing that we would or wouldn't do, and then the whole time I'm wondering, I wonder if she's keeping to her agreement. I wonder if she's doing. I bet she's not. And I had this feeling she was doing the same thing. We didn't trust each other. It was like, I bet she is fixing that good meal. You know, that wasn't what it was about. I bet she is giving in because she wants his love. Right. And if she is, then I better. Yeah. Again, it goes back to one of the things where sister wives, true relationships are based on always what their husband's going to think, and always based on who's going to love me more, and always based on if God, always deceptive.
They're based on competition.
Deceptive because it's based on pleasing my husband, and it has to be, even though they don't want it to be competitive, it has to be for survival's sake. It has to be. If I'm not going to give him the best treatment, he certainly doesn't want to come over. He can go somewhere else. And I knew that. That was loud and clear, and I'm sure my sister wife knew that. If he got mad and wanted to leave, he can leave. He can come to my house or he can leave. Why would we bring up a problem? Why would we want to? It was dangerous. It wasn't safe.
That's the point. If you had equality in a relationship, you could have differences of opinion without fear of being cast out or replaced. Mm-hmm. If you've got a whole bunch of wives, you can have all you want. What difference does it make if you lose one or two or more? You can always get more because you're unlimited.
I can't go.
And the women know that.
Yeah.
They absolutely know that they can be cast out or set aside. My own mom was set aside by my father for years. I never, ever, ever remember my father eating a meal in our house or staying overnight because where we lived wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. He came by to control us and to issue orders. Mm-hmm. And he would take my mom in the bedroom and discuss her, whatever he did with her, and leave her crying. But he never spent the night. Mm-hmm. He never spent any time with his children. Ever. It was just issuing orders. Mm-hmm. And our food wasn't good enough. He didn't eat in our house. He never sat at our table. But my mother, for the first time in her life, had approached her own consciousness and stated it. And that was her reward. That's what happened. He cast her out, and yet he didn't let her go. He still owned her. He still controlled her. But he did not acknowledge her as a wife or a lover or a human being. She was property that was penalized because she presented what she thought was a real truth in her heart, and that was it. He totally spent the rest of his life punishing her.
I think in the old school, in the early years, the chauvinists, the men seemed to be much more chauvinistic in that way. I remember hearing many stories about men your father's age who were part of the original Circle of Friends, the original polygamous foundation after the church did away with polygamy. I remember several other men and literal stories from their wives and their children, how their mothers were punished for what they were considered bad behavior, which could be having an opinion, which could be not having the house cleaned up just so, not having the meal right when I wanted it. No matter what it was, they were punished, and it was like, I have other wives, I'll see you when I feel like it, and when I think you repented, or when I think you behaved, or when I think you'll kiss my ass good enough, or whatever it is that they were upset about. I not necessarily witnessed that, but heard first-hand stories of that several times. And I would hear things like, oh, that wife so-and-so over there is being punished. I talked today on my show about a woman who in our neighborhood, I felt that was happening to her all the time. I never saw her husband there. She walked around the house like a zombie, and I really thought something was wrong with her. And then I found out she was just as normal as anybody, but she was ultimately depressed all the time, and he treated her terrible. He was always with the younger wives. He showed up once in a great while to who knows what where, because I didn't live there. And she was the servant in the household, walked around, said, yes, okay, whatever, cleaned the house, I don't even know if she had a life outside of her servitude to her children and to her husband. And I was very young, and it broke my heart.
Well, the power balance in polygamy is so lopsided, and it gets more and more and more lopsided as he takes on more women. So women become more and more powerless, more and more discardable, more and more, who cares? I can always get all the women I want. You can age out and be set on the shelf and forgotten about, and we've seen that over and over again.
Yeah. And
in the delightful freedom of choice for polygamy, for men only, they're the only ones that can freely choose multiple mates and call it a lifestyle and get away with it. Women cannot. They have to, oh yes, I agree, because if they don't, they can phase out just like any other woman that presents an inconvenient truth. You know, anybody that isn't going on for staying sweet, no matter what the guy does, she can phase out real fast. You do not. I can't blame my ex-husband for what he went through either. I believe he was a victim of polygamy. He believed in it, and he was stressed to the max trying to provide for his children, to be a good father, to be a good husband, to be equal. I believe the stresses were there for him, but he too got to the point where it was easier to just shut either or both of us out if we complained about anything. And it was like, you don't dare bring it up. Why would you do that? Because you know you're going to be wrong in the long run, because he can't deal with that emotion. He doesn't know what the hell is he supposed to do? He has to have 2 wives for hell's sake. You know, that kind of thing. It's like, I have to go. I have to go there, so you need to just grow up and stop feeling sad because I can't deal with your feelings. And vice versa. And it became so overwhelming with him that even he became depressed. So it's just constant inequality. The constant demand on the man is unrealistic.
Oh, yeah.
Because he cannot meet the emotional, intellectual, psychological needs of those women, let alone the financial needs. We're not talking about educational needs or anything else. We're just or medical needs. We're just talking about the needs of the heart and the mind.
Right.
He cannot do it because it doesn't work that way. He's already spread too thin. The bigger the family, the thinner the spread.
And if I'm a nice wife, and if my sister wife is, and if we had other wives, and all the other wives that are wives, plural wives, if they're doing what they're supposed to, they're supposed to suck up and hold it in and hold their breath and and swallow everything to not create any more problem for him, like you said, because he's already got enough. And he doesn't need me adding to that, for heaven's sakes. I'm going to be the good wife. I'm going to be the martyr. I'm going to be the one who always supports him no matter what he decides. That was my mother. I'm going to do whatever he wants and whatever any other wife wants, and I'm going to get my salvation in heaven. So there's payoffs on both sides of that. It's like bring him, treat him like a god. Meanwhile, I get my payoff in heaven if I suffer long enough, and if I keep sweet while I'm doing all that, and if I don't rock the boat, and if I don't create more heartache for him. And
so she who suffers the most gets the greatest reward.
Oh, big suffering gets you big brownie points in heaven.
My mom used to collect suffering like brown stamps that you'd put in the little book and turn them into rewards in heaven.
Yeah.
And she really, really believed the more you suffer, the greater your reward in heaven. She was a really, really good martyr. She was a masochist, actually.
I think they were sisters. They were sister-in-laws. And
right.
The same, was it painted by the same brush from day one, or their belief systems. Right. And all the same that you have to endure and suffer, and the more you suffer, the greater your rewards in heaven. I mean, that's common knowledge, for heaven's sakes. So let's go for it. Let's see how big we can suffer.
Yeah,
women are happy to do that in most cases, and it makes them a better person because it refines them. The more they suffer, the more they learn to shut down. The more they suffer, the more they learn to hold it all in. The more they suffer, the more sweeter they become. And sometimes it gets so good that pretty soon they're going to explode and act crazy like my mother did. After she'd hold it in, after months and months and months, she'd explode and sound and look like a crazy woman. My
mother went into depression. She suffered from depression an awful lot.
Big depression.
And then, of course, she was blamed for that.
It was one or the other. Mom's tears, her sadness, her heartache. It was shut the door, read a book, escape, and depression to the max. Or if something set her off from all that stuff, she'd stuff down inside of her. And I was like that too. I don't know quite as much as my mom because I was trying to, deal with it more, I think. But she would hold it all in and hold it in, go in and read her books and the scriptures that would tell her to be good, behave yourself, gonna go to heaven, all those things, and she'd escape by books and her working. That was my mom. She was at work and come home and read and shut the door, and then she would something would set it off. Some little thing would set it off, and she would scream and rage, and her face would get all red, and she would throw in a tantrum, and it all came out, so nobody knew what in the heck was the problem, and Dad would go, like, what the? Because he didn't know. I mean, because she tried, and he shut her down. If she tried to say something, he'd shut her down. She learned early in their marriage to behave, or else.